My name is Raina Turner and I'm 29 years old. For as long as I can remember, I've been the shadow that my family pretended not to see. My parents have always adored my younger sister Lila like she was a gift from heaven, while I became the background noise in their perfect little story. It wasn't always this way. When I was 8, I remember standing at my mother's hospital bedside holding her cold hand after she lost a baby. She cried for weeks, and when Lila was born 2 years later, that grief turned into worship. Our miracle child, my mother called her voice trembling with the kind of love I had never heard directed at me. From then on, everything revolved around Lila, her laughter, her tantrums, her every breath. But what no one else seemed to notice was how sharp her smiles were when no one was looking. When I turned 12, Grandma gave me her antique silver locket, the one she'd promised to the first granddaughter. I wore it everywhere, clutching it like a secret. The next morning it was gone. I tore my room apart, searching, sobbing, accusing the wind. 3 days later, I found it crushed under Lila's bed, the chain twisted, the pendant cracked. She just tilted her head, shrugged, and said, "Maybe it didn't want to belong to you." That was the first time I realized some people are born knowing how to destroy gently. As the years passed, her tricks grew bolder. When I got good grades, she accidentally spilled juice over my report card. When I brought home a boy from high school, she told him I wet the bed until I was 13. She laughed as his face turned pale. "Just a joke," she said, but the next day he stopped talking to me altogether. I told my parents, desperate for them to see what she was doing, but my mother only smiled tiredly. "Rena, you're the older sister," she'd say. "Be patient. She's still learning." Learning what? How to manipulate. How to make me invisible. By the time I graduated from college, I didn't care anymore. I packed my things, moved to San Francisco, and told myself that I was free. I built a life there, an apartment filled with books, a job I was proud of, and quiet weekends that belonged to me alone. My calls with my parents became polite, scheduled things. I almost forgot what it felt like to argue, to beg for their understanding. Then one morning my phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice cracked before she even said my name. "Your father's in the hospital. It was a heart attack." For a second, the world just stopped. I heard the sound of my own breathing, too loud, too steady. Then the panic hit like a wave. I packed without thinking, passport, charger, whatever I could grab, and took the first flight home. When I reached the hospital, my father looked fragile, smaller than I remembered. His eyes filled when he saw me. "My lucky girl," he whispered weakly. "I didn't think I'd see you so soon." Lila was already there, sitting close to him, holding his hand like she was his guardian angel. She gave me that same familiar smile, the one that used to make my stomach twist when I was a kid. "You made it," she said sweetly. "We were just talking about how much Dad missed you." I smiled back even though every word burned. It had been years since I'd been home yet. Somehow the walls felt exactly the same, warm, light-framed photos, and that heavy air of denial that always lingered around us. Over dinner that night, my mother announced cheerfully, "Now that your father is recovering, I think it's time for a family trip, something peaceful to celebrate his second chance." My father nodded. "A vacation sounds perfect. Just us, the four of us." Lila's smile faltered for half a second before she said, "Of course. That sounds lovely." I wanted to say no. I wanted to run back to San Francisco to the quiet life I had built away from all of this. But my father looked so hopeful, fragile, and grateful in a way that softened everything inside me. So I said yes. That night, as I unpacked in my childhood room, I found something strange in the drawer by the bed, an old photo of Lila and me as kids torn neatly in half. My half was missing. I stared at the ripped edge for a long time, and something cold settled in my chest. If I'd learned anything from growing up in this house, it was that nothing here happened by accident. And I couldn't shake the feeling that saying yes to that family vacation might be the worst decision I'd made in years. The morning of our trip started deceptively calm, the kind of calm that comes before a storm you pretend not to see. My father was in good spirits, moving slower than usual, but smiling as he double-checked our tickets and passports. My mother hummed while pouring coffee. Lila, of course, was scrolling through her phone, pretending to be bored, but smirking every few seconds like she knew something we didn't. I wanted to ignore it, for my father's sake. "Raina, did you sleep okay?" my mother asked, her tone soft but distant, the kind of politeness people use on guests, not daughters. "Fine," I said, forcing a smile. "I'm just glad Dad's feeling well enough to travel." My father looked up, eyes shining with pride. "My girls together again. That's all I need." Lila leaned over and kissed his cheek. "We'll make sure you have the best vacation ever." Her words sounded sweet, but her eyes flicked toward me, daring me to ruin the illusion. At the airport, everything unfolded like a cruel joke. The air smelled like coffee and jet fuel. People rushed past us with rolling suitcases and sleepy faces. I handed over my ID and ticket, expecting the usual mechanical beep of approval. Instead, the agent frowned. "I'm sorry, miss. Your ticket's been canceled." What I blinked certain I'd misheard. She typed again, brows knitting tighter. "Yes, the system shows it was canceled last night. Refund processed. Do you have another reservation?" I turned toward my father, who was already rifling through his papers in confusion. "That can't be right," he said, flustered. "I booked all four together, paid at once. How could only hers be canceled?" My mother joined in, voice sharp. "Maybe you forgot to confirm it, dear." "I didn't," he muttered. Then I felt it, that prickling at the back of my neck. I looked over. Lila was standing a few steps away, her boarding pass in hand, her lips curving into the smallest, most satisfied smile. That smile I'd seen since childhood. That same I win expression. "Lila," I said quietly, "what did you do?" She widened her eyes, all fake innocence. "Me, I didn't touch anything." "Of course not," I snapped. "Just like you didn't steal Grandma's locket, right? Or tell my ex I cheated on him." My mother hissed, Raina not here. "She canceled my flight," I said louder this time. People were starting to look. "You think this is a coincidence? It's always her." Lila tilted her head, unbothered. "If you think I'm smart enough to hack an airline system, maybe you should give me more credit." That did it. My father's voice broke through the tension, trembling and desperate. "Please, not now. Not at the airport. We can fix this later." The ticket agent glanced between us, uncomfortable. "There's another flight tomorrow, miss, but it's fully booked. You could try standby." My father turned to me, guilt in his eyes. "Maybe you could come later. We'll wait for you there." I laughed. A short, bitter sound. "You'll wait for me there on the beach with her." My mother folded her arms. "Don't make this harder than it is. You travel all the time for work. Missing one trip isn't the end of the world." Missing one trip. The words landed like a slap. I realized then that they weren't disappointed I couldn't go. They were relieved. I looked at my father, the only one who seemed to understand. His lips trembled. He started to say something, but my mother gently took his hand. "We'll miss our flight," she said. "Let's go." And just like that, they turned away. As they walked towards security, Lila lingered. She leaned in, her voice soft enough for only me to hear. "You should have known better than to try to fit into a family that doesn't need you." Then she joined them, her laughter echoing faintly as the automatic doors closed behind her. I stood there for a long time, frozen in the noise and movement of strangers. It was strange, the humiliation didn't even sting anymore. It just confirmed what I'd always known. They'd always leave me behind. By the time I got home, the house felt emptier than ever. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat by the window, and stared at my reflection in the glass, tired, resigned, but still somehow waiting. Over the next few days, my parents sent cheerful photos from the trip. My father smiling by the ocean, my mother holding tropical drinks, Lila flashing that familiar grin. In one video call, my father said, "You should have come, sweetheart. We're having such a peaceful time." Peaceful, of course it was. I wasn't there. Still, I smiled and told him I was happy they were enjoying themselves. Because what else could I say? But that night, as I turned off my phone, a strange thought struck me, one that made my heart tighten. What if peace was the most dangerous lie of all? 3 days passed before my phone started ringing before dawn. The sound was shrill, desperate, the kind that yanks you straight out of sleep and into fear. It was my mother. "Rena," she gasped, voice trembling. "Something's wrong with your father." My heart stopped. What happened? Is he... No, he's okay for now, but his medication, it's missing. I sat up, clutching the phone. "What do you mean missing?" She explained that every morning she prepared his pills a delicate balance that kept his heart stable, but now several doses were gone. At first she thought maybe she miscounted or dropped them. Then more disappeared. Panic bled through her voice. "Raina, I swear I checked everywhere. His case. My purse, the drawers, nothing. If he misses a dose..." "Where's Lila?" I interrupted. There was a pause. The kind of pause that means you already know the answer. "She's asleep," my mother whispered. "She's been acting strange lately, snapping at us, staying out late. I don't want to think she'd..." "Mom!" My voice came out sharper than I intended. "You don't want to think it, but you do, don't you?" Her breath hitched. Later that evening, she called again. Her voice was shaking so hard I could barely understand her words. "I found them," she said. "Found what?" "The pills." She explained that while Lila was out shopping, she'd gone into her room to borrow sunscreen. They're tucked neatly in the nightstand drawer were all of my father's missing medications. row after row of bottles hidden like trophies. I couldn't speak. "What kind of person does this?" my mother whispered, her voice trembling between fear and disbelief. She could have killed him. "She didn't want to kill him," I said quietly. "She wanted control." The realization hung between us like smoke. I told her not to confront Lila yet, not while they were in a foreign country, not when emotions were this raw. "Wait until you're home," I said. "You need to think, not react." But deep down, I knew my warning would be too late, because Lila was never one to wait for the storm to pass. She was the storm. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying old memories, Lila crying, crocodile tears after stealing my diary, my parents rushing to comfort her. Not me. Every time she crossed a line, they softened. They made excuses. "She's sensitive. She didn't mean it. You have to understand Rena. She's different." Different. That word used to cut deeper than any insult. The next evening, as I was getting ready for bed, my phone buzzed again. It was my father this time. His voice was trembling. "Rena, she's in jail." For a second, I thought I'd misheard. "What?" He exhaled shakily. "Lila. The police took her." The words didn't feel real, like they belonged in someone else's story. He explained that after my mother's discovery, they couldn't hold back. They confronted her that night in the hotel room. My father had demanded answers. "Why did you take my medicine?" Lila and Lila had snapped. She started screaming, he said, his voice breaking, throwing things. "She said she'd never forgive us for inviting you, that if we ever spoke to you again, she'd teach us a lesson." I could hear my mother sobbing in the background. When hotel security tried to calm her down, she hit one of them. He continued. "The police had to intervene. They arrested her for disorderly conduct." My chest tightened. "Is she hurt?" "No, she's fine," he said quickly. "But she refused to talk to us. The officers said she'd be released in 24 hours. They wouldn't let us post bail yet. I didn't know whether to feel pity or grim satisfaction. Maybe both." After he hung up, I just sat there staring at the wall. The miracle child, the center of their world, was finally facing consequences. But instead of relief, all I felt was a hollow ache. Because this wasn't victory. This was collapse. The next day I tried calling them again, but there was no answer. Hours passed. I texted, emailed, nothing. Until finally my phone buzzed again that night. It was a message from my mother. "We can't find our passports or wallets. They're gone." I froze. My fingers trembled as I typed back, "Gone." "Yes, we think she took them. We can't leave the country." It hit me then, the kind of realization that makes your stomach drop. Lila wasn't just angry, she was unraveling. And this time it wasn't a game. My parents were trapped with her madness thousands of miles away. As I sat there in my dark apartment, the city lights flickering outside my window, I couldn't shake the thought that maybe this wasn't about revenge anymore. Maybe Lila had been broken long before any of us noticed. And maybe we were all just paying the price for the years we refused to see it. The next 48 hours were chaos, a blur of calls, half-sent messages, and fear that sat like lead in my stomach. When my mother finally answered, her voice was so raw I barely recognized it. "Rena, we don't know what to do." I could hear the tremble in her words, and somewhere behind her, my father's labored breathing. They were still stranded abroad without passports, without money, and more terrifyingly, without control. "What about the embassy?" I asked. "We called," she said. "They're trying to help, but it'll take time to issue new documents. And your father? He's not well." Then her voice cracked completely. "She took everything, Rena. The passports, the wallets, even the spare keys. She said we didn't deserve to come home." I gripped my phone so tight my knuckles whitened. "I'll send you money. You can at least stay somewhere safe for now." "Western Union?" she asked in a whisper. "Yes, I'll handle it. Just stay away from her. Please." There was silence on the other end. Then softly, "We're sorry, Rena, for everything." The words landed heavy. I wanted to believe them, but after years of being blamed and dismissed, forgiveness wasn't something I could give away that easily. Still, I couldn't ignore their desperation. So I wired the money, booked them a temporary hotel under my name, and waited for updates. By the third night, my father called. His voice was weak, trembling between exhaustion and shame. "Your mother and we confronted her before the police came that night," he admitted. "We thought she'd calm down, but she looked at us like strangers." He paused, and I could hear him swallow hard. "She said we ruined her life, that everything wrong with her was our fault." I didn't interrupt. I let the words hang because I wanted them to sit with that truth. "She said," he continued, "that we should have never brought you back, that you were poison, and she'd rather see us suffer than see you forgiven." My eyes burned, but I refused to cry. You see it now, I said quietly. This is who she's always been. He didn't argue, he just exhaled shakily. I wish I had listened sooner. For the first time in my life, my father sounded small, defeated. A few days later, they finally found their passports hidden inside the lining of Lila's suitcase, tucked behind her clothes like secrets she never intended to reveal. When they returned home, everything was different. The lightness that once filled their house was gone, replaced by tension so thick you could feel it through the phone. My mother called one evening and said we told her to leave Rena. We couldn't take it anymore. What did she say? She laughed. That single word carried a kind of horror I can't describe. She said she'd destroy us, my mother whispered. She threatened to tell everyone that we abused her, that we neglected her as a child. You know how people talk in this town, one rumor could ruin everything. Your father's still respected at the clinic. He can't afford that scandal. And she knows it, I said. Silence again. Then, we're scared of her. I wanted to tell them they deserved it, that years of enabling her had led here, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. Because beneath the anger, there was still love. Love twisted and bruised, but love all the same. Get a lawyer, I finally said. Don't try to reason with her. Just protect yourselves. My mother sniffled. It feels wrong taking legal action against our own daughter. It felt wrong when she took Dad's medicine too, I said. And when she left you stranded, you can't help someone who doesn't want to be saved. She didn't respond right away. Then quietly she said, Rena, are you coming home? I closed my eyes. The question should have been simple. But home had never been a place that wanted me. Not yet, I said softly. If I come now, she'll just use me as another weapon against you. I could hear her crying again before she hung up. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at my reflection in the dark window, my face lined with exhaustion, guilt, and something like grief. For years, I'd wanted them to see the truth, to admit I wasn't the villain of our story. But now that they finally did, there was no satisfaction in it, only sadness. Because what they'd lost wasn't just their peace, it was the illusion that had kept them blind for decades. And I knew that illusions once shattered, never pieced back together the same way. By the time my parents returned home, the house felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by the echoes of everything they'd ignored. Lila had turned it into her battlefield. I knew it the moment my mother called again, her voice trembling. She's gotten worse, Rena. Every night there's something new. I pressed the phone to my ear. Worse how? She screams at us. Breaks things. She hides the car keys, the remote, even your father's phone. Yesterday, she threw a plate because I didn't cook what she wanted. Her voice cracked. She's not our Lila anymore. But that was the truth. My mother still refused to see Lila hadn't changed. She'd simply dropped the mask she'd worn her entire life. She was always your Lila, I said quietly. You just never wanted to believe what she was capable of. There was a long silence. Then my mother whispered, We failed. Both of you, didn't we? I didn't answer, because she already knew. In the following weeks, my parents tried to reason with Lila. My father begged her to get therapy to let someone help. Lila laughed in his face. You're just scared I'll tell people what you did, she sneered. What we did, he asked, bewildered. Her smile turned venomous. You replaced me. You brought her back. After everything I did to make you love me, you still wanted her. She meant me. That night, she smashed the family portraits that still hung in the hallway, glass splintering, frames cracking. One by one, she tore them down until the only face left untouched was her own graduation photo. When I called the next morning, my father's voice was hollow. I think she's dangerous, Rena. Then you know what you have to do, I said. He hesitated. She's our daughter. And you're her victims, I replied. You can love her and still protect yourselves. It took them a week to make the call. The police came after another outburst, this one violent enough to send a chair crashing through a window. They arrested her for assault and issued a temporary restraining order. My parents sat in their living room afterward, the air thick with shame. I arrived that weekend, the first time I'd stepped foot in that house in years. The living room looked smaller, emptier. There were scratches on the wall, broken glass glinting in the corners. My mother sat on the sofa, clutching a blanket. My father stared at his hands. When they saw me, something inside both of them broke. My mother burst into tears. I don't know how we got here, she sobbed. I don't know who she is anymore. I sat beside her quietly. You do, I said. You just didn't want to. For a moment, the only sound was the ticking clock, slow, heavy, accusing. We're filing for eviction, my father said, finally, his voice low. The lawyer says it's the only way. We'll drop the assault charge if she leaves peacefully. Will she? I asked. He shook his head. I don't think she knows how. The day they served her, the notice Lila came back to the house with her lawyer. I was there standing behind my father. When she saw me, her expression twisted, not anger, not sorrow, but something darker. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "But you don't understand they made me this way." Her words hit harder than I expected, because as much as I hated to admit it, part of me knew she was right. My parents' denial had raised us both on the same poison, hers fed by indulgence, mine by neglect. "We all made mistakes," I said quietly, "but you made choices." She looked at me for a long moment, her eyes cold and wet. Then she turned to our parents. "You'll regret this." When she left, the door slammed so hard that the frame cracked. 2 days later, my mother called again, whispering through tears. "She came back last night. She tried to break in. We called the police." "Is she still there?" "No, they took her again. This time, they said she had a knife." My stomach dropped. Did she hurt anyone? "No," my mother said, but she could have. The sound of her crying filled the silence between us. I stared out the window, the city lights blurring into streaks of gold. "She's not evil," my mother murmured. "She's sick." "Maybe," I said, "but sickness doesn't erase what she's done." Later that night, my father called me separately. His voice was steady, though tired. We filed the final papers. The court approved the eviction. "She'll be gone next week." "Do you feel relieved?" I asked. He paused. "No," he said softly, "just empty." And I understood, because for the first time, my parents weren't losing their daughter, they were facing the truth about her, about themselves. That night, as I lay awake in my old bedroom, surrounded by walls that had heard too many secrets, I realized something that terrified me. Maybe Lila wasn't the only one broken by our family. Maybe we all were just in different ways. It had been 3 months since the eviction was finalized. Lila was gone. The house was quiet again, too quiet according to my mother. She and my father arrived in San Francisco one breezy evening, exhausted, but lighter somehow. When I opened the door to let them in, I noticed the subtle differences, the lines under my father's eyes, the way my mother's hands trembled before reaching out to hug me. They were older, smaller, but maybe for the first time real. We didn't talk about Lila that night. Instead, I cooked dinner, something simple, pasta salad and wine. We ate slowly, almost cautiously, as if none of us trusted peace anymore. When the plates were cleared, my father finally spoke. "We owe you more than an apology, Rena." I didn't look at him right away. "You already said it." "No," he said firmly. "Not like this." He leaned forward, his hands clasped together. "We spent years believing Lila's lies because it was easier than facing what we did to you. We built our world around guilt, the guilt of losing that first baby, of needing someone to fill the silence. Lila became our miracle, and we made her believe she was perfect. We made you believe you weren't." My mother's voice trembled. We thought love meant protecting her from everything, even consequences, but all we did was protect ourselves from the truth. For a long time, no one spoke. The hum of the refrigerator filled the room like background static. Then I said quietly, "I spent half my life thinking if I were quieter or kinder or more successful, you'd finally see me. I stopped trying when I realized blindness can be a choice." My mother's tears came fast. "You have every right to hate us." "I don't," I said honestly. "But I don't forgive you either. Not yet." It wasn't anger in my voice, it was exhaustion. The kind that seeps into your bones after years of shouting into silence. We sat there, all three of us, suspended between old wounds and fragile hope. My father took a deep breath. "We spoke to a lawyer about getting her mental evaluation. She's staying with a friend right now, and they said she's calmer. We think she's sick, Rena. Not just angry, something deeper." I nodded slowly. "I believe that." He hesitated. "Would you come if we met her again just once with a therapist present?" I looked down at my hands. The thought of seeing Lila again, her cold eyes, her quiet venom, made my chest tighten. But beneath that fear, something softer flickered. "I'll think about it," I said. "But if I do, it won't be for her. It'll be for you." My mother reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine. That's all we could ask. The next morning, we walked along the pier together. The city was waking up, street vendors opening stalls, seagulls crying overhead. My parents looked around like tourists, smiling at little things, the fog over the bay, a busker playing guitar, the smell of fresh bread from a cafe. I watched them wondering how many years they'd spent chasing an image of happiness that never existed. Maybe we all had. As we sat by the railing, my father said softly, "You know, your mother used to say we were blessed with one miracle child." He paused. "But she was wrong. We had two. We just failed to treat you like one." Something inside me cracked, not in pain, but release. I didn't cry. I just let the wind carry his words away because maybe that was enough. That evening, when they were packing to leave, my mother stopped at the door. Raina, she said, if we try to help her again, and it falls apart, will you still answer the phone? I met her eyes. Yes, I said, but this time I'll answer for me, not for her. After they left, I stood at my window, watching the city lights flicker like restless stars. My reflection stared back, older, calmer, and somehow freer. Maybe love isn't about who we protect. Maybe it's about who we finally stop protecting from the truth.